Hello everyone and welcome to a live session of EvolveLAB. We're going to be doing our webinar here on YouTube Live for the first time. So let us kind of know how it goes at the end of it. In the past we've done them on a different platform, but really excited to be using this new service with YouTube Live. So give us a shout. Hopefully a lot of you are turning in and yeah, let's see how it goes. There's a chat available online as well if you go to the actual YouTube page. Really excited about that. All right. Looks like we're getting a message that the chat on the blog. All right. Let's start this out. So, welcome everyone to the EvolveLAB How to Make Revit Not Look Like Revit webinar YouTube live session. Hopefully all of you guys are streaming in from around the world. Make this kind of an interactive with the chat on YouTube and everything like that. And if you guys go to the chat on YouTube, we'll be able to get your guys' questions in there and be able to forward them onto us. You do have to be on the YouTube channel though. All right, so let's kick this webinar off with a quick intro. Who are we? Just in case you guys don't know who we are or you're tuning in for the very first time to one of our webinars, I'll let Zoolander kind of kick off a little bit about who we are there. So who we are, we're EvolveLAB. We're mainly out of Boulder and Denver, Colorado. We are a full-service computational design and BIM consulting firm. We do anything from BIM modeling and design assist, content creation, anything dealing with Revit families, from Revit to parametric families in Dynamo, or anything that you guys can think of that is dealing with the building industry with computational design. That's kind of the bread and butter of what we do. It's a lot of fun. We're located out of Denver and Boulder, Colorado. I'm coming to you from Denver. Yeah, so that's kind of who we are, the base of what we are. And this is kind of what we're going to be talking about today. Pretty basic, but the gist of what I kind of want to explore for you guys and tell you about is what's happening in, let's see, let's get this up. Do this over here. Basically what's happening with Revit and the advancements that are happening in Revit modeling environment. And basically a lot of this is driven by kind of experience in the field, what we see at EvolveLAB is happening with our clients, anything like that that really kind of pops up that becomes relevant, that seems to be happening a lot, and we kind of see that as an opportunity to give a little bit of feedback and kind of come up with our solutions to everyone. Basically, if I can put it in a nutshell, one of the issues that we kind of see with some of our clients is that there's a huge disconnect between a 3D model and what is designed at early stages of a design project, and then what happens when you kind of convert that design model or design content and you take that into, say, a documentation software like Revit, and immediately there becomes a disconnect between what you had in the early stages of design and what's being documented. And then you kind of leave the SketchUp model or Rhino model or Format model a little bit behind, and you kind of really hone in your focus onto the Revit model and creating really good documentation, creating really good details with built walls and built families and things that really work well in Revit. And then what happens is you start working in 2D a lot in Revit. That starts to become a trend when you really get down to like deadlines and I need to get these details and these construction documents out on time. And so what happens is you get locked into a 2D environment, and the SketchUp model or the Rhino model or whatever 3D modeler you were working on before, that one kind of goes to the wayside. And what happens is you get to You get to CDs, you get to CA, you're good to go, your documents are good to go, and then what happens is you're like, oh man, I need 5 renders for these presentation boards, and what happens is you forgot that you did a lot of design work early in the stages, and then that design work kind of stopped a little bit, and then you hit the Revit side and you started creating wall details, and you started creating plans and sections and real built items, and then you get to the end of it and you're like, wow, I need marketing materials really badly, like the client needs marketing materials. And then what happens is that you take the Revit model and you're like, none of that was built into it, because it was basically like, it was the way you workflowed in it was you did it for documentation, and none of it was built to the level that a design like render model could be built at. So you go back to the SketchUp model and you try to put in the SketchUp model all the Revit details and the wall materials and all the stuff that you kind of tried to do in Revit. And I'm basically here to tell you to stop doing that. What we see a lot is that this is a huge time suck. And what happens is that you end up with this disconnection between the design model, the documentation model, and then a render model. And there's no correlation, and it ends up becoming a waste of time for you and employees, and designs get forgotten in the Revit model but don't get translated to the SketchUp model. So basically this webinar is to tell you to stop doing that. Basically what I'm trying to tell you is that Revit has the capability to do all of the stuff that you need to create beautiful, awesome renderings or special elevation visualizations or anything like that. And basically I'm going to kind of walk you through a few quick steps in the next 50 or so minutes that we have on how to actually go about doing that using software that you kind of transition through. That being said, I'm not telling you to stop modeling early in SketchUp, stop modeling in Rhino. I'm not telling you to do that. What I am telling you to do is to pull designs forward. And once you move from a platform to a platform, make sure that you're elevating the most current software program that you're using to the level that it should be. And that's kind of what I'm going to go over with you guys. All right, so agenda for today. Quick things. Simple ways to visualize your model in Revit. They're going to be super quick. It can be anything from a elevation that you want to use for a development plan, or if you want to actually start doing 3D views in Revit and rendering those out. I'm going to kind of go through different specific ways that you can visualize in Revit. I'm going to go through kind of material management in Revit. The material manager is pretty strong and robust. It can do some really good things, and if managed correctly, it can really make your models pop, whether it's in a 2D plan, a 2D elevation, or a 3D rendering. I'm going to go over a couple of rendering practices in Revit. They're going to range from basic Revit 3D geometry model in simple views, so not actually rendering anything out, but simply just setting those up. Native Revit rendering, using the Revit renderer, using the cloud to render in Revit, and how do you go about setting up scenes and using credits. And then lastly, I'm going to kind of touch on the rendering in Revit using one of our favorite programs that we really like to use now, which is Nscape, which is a very strong software. It's a live renderer. It kind of reacts to changes that you make in Revit, and it gives you a live visualization of kind of what you're designing. And then I'm going to touch very briefly, not a whole lot, on a little bit of the post-production and kind of what you want to use a little bit as far as which software, kind of what layers you want to have in your post-production of your renderings. All right. So let's start it off. All right. So basically what I've done here is kind of what I'm going to go over and show you guys is I've created a model specifically for this example. It's a pretty simple basic model. It's one that you guys will probably recognize. I modeled this off of the Farnsworth house. Many of you are probably familiar with that. Pretty cool design, a lot of glass, pretty basic. But I'm going to be using this as a kind of example for how we can take our Revit visualization to the next level. All right. Let's let this load. It's a pretty heavy model, so it's going to kind of take sometimes a little bit longer to load. All right, and I'm going to change my background to white so that you guys kind of recognize it a little bit more, and it becomes that very stereotypical line drawing that you get in Revit, which is lovely. I know everybody here loves that white and black Revit. It's pretty awesome, right? All right. So we got that. Move my toolbars out of there. I got 3 screens going. Oh man, it's awesome. I love it. If anybody haven't touched into the multiple displays for design work, man, 3 screens and the more the merrier. Okay, so basically this is kind of what you get when you get a 2D drawing in Revit. Right now you're seeing, I'm going to turn off my planting here really quick so it's a little bit easier for you guys to see. All right, so Farnsworth House, designed in Revit. This is kind of what you get, right? This is basically your elevation drawing. Now, to me, it tells the information, right? You got your levels, you got your first floor, you got your site work with your little hatch, and that's about the limit of it, right? I mean, if you're in Revit and you're creating these documents and you have an elevation, you're going to dimension this out, you're going to tag your windows, and you're basically going to be done. And that's it. So what we see a lot is a lot of people try to take some things like elevations, rendered sections, rendered plans, things like that, and they try to make them a little bit more, dynamic. Like people want to see a little bit more than just, 20 lines and, oh, that's the building I'm getting? That's not really great. So you can elevate your simple 2D flat drawings in Revit a little bit higher. Now what I'm going to use as an example is what people in our experience we usually see do this as, and what they do is they take their model that they developed in SketchUp, that they developed in Rhino, through schematic design, through DD, and then kind of giving it off to the guys to do in Revit. They've taken that model and sometimes they use that to do some elevation work. So what I'm going to show you here really quick is the exact same house, basically, and it's designed in SketchUp. So what we can do is we can look at, oh, not that one, I want that one, right? Okay, so we got your SketchUp elevation, we got your Revit elevation. All right, so next to each other they look pretty okay. So in SketchUp, you have the ability to maybe add a little bit of texture and a little bit of material. Revit, that usually just doesn't happen, and it's not saying it's not right or wrong, but there is a way that you can maybe possibly use this elevation to kind of convey a little bit more than the size of the windows, the tag of the windows, and the elevations of the levels. So basically what I had before is there was vegetation on it and things like that. And the really great thing about doing stuff like this is it's going to elevate your drawing and it's going to make it a little bit more believable. You can still have all that information in there, but it becomes a little bit more believable. And to do this, you can kind of do a couple different things. And they're built into Revit, and I'm just going to go over them really briefly on how to kind of go through that. So if you see down below here, and I think you guys should be able to see my cursor, but if you go down here, right down here, there's this little cube, visual style, consistent colors. And underneath of that is the graphics display option. All right, so basically this is your graphic display of how this view looks. There's a bunch of different styles you can have. You can have wireframe. And basically this shows literally everything in the elevation as if it's transparent. You got your hidden line, that's one we were looking at before, that shows everything in white and black. Shaded is going to be the shaded color, which is kind of a sort of a realistic look. Consistent colors. This one's a little bit different depending on how you set up your material. It'll either take the 2D material color or the render material. It'll do like an average of the color and it'll assign a color to that material. And then there's realistic. Realistic is really nice. So realistic, you can get actual materials assigned. You can get really realistic looking vegetation or entourage. So for an example, I'm going to keep it in realistic and I'm going to unhide those vegetation items that I had in before, just to kind of give you a sense of how this looks in real life, in the realistic view, sorry, not actually in real life. All right, so now we have our trees, right? They look pretty realistic, and these are just the basic Revit trees. So that's in the realistic view, and you don't get that in the shaded view. In the shaded view, they become kind of disgusting, actually. They don't look that great. And they have lines through them. Why do trees always have lines through them? All right, so we're going to keep it realistic, and we do want to apply that. So basically what I'm going to go through is I'm going to go through each of these little drop-down menus on how to kind of finally adjust your elevation, your section, your plans to kind of fine-tune it to make it a little bit more realistic to be what you want it to look like. All right, so that's the model display. You can do realistic or any of those. You can show your edges. So if you don't want to see any of your edges on any of your model, you can kind of take away from that SketchUp look, right? So if you guys noticed, all of those lines kind of disappeared. Similar to kind of what you can do in SketchUp here, where if you go to edit, or view, sorry, edge style, and I turned off all of my edges. So as you can see, you kind of get this kind of, I don't know, it's almost real life, because you don't have, in real life, you don't have profile lines and you don't have cut lines. But it still looks a little, I don't know, funky. Like, it feels like as if it's still a drawing, it still needs to have that little bit of defined edge. So we can throw those edges back on there, and they're light enough that you can kind of still see boundaries of walls and edges of columns and stairs, but without having to be super 2D white and black drawing. And you can do that over here too. So I like to usually just keep my edges on, especially if these are still going to be construction documents and you want to be able to dimension to them or anything like that. And then you can always smooth those lines with anti-aliasing. And anti-aliasing, if you don't know in the rendering world, that's basically making as small as pixels as possible and making things smooth. So we'll check that. We'll make sure those are applied. And again, I'm doing this in an elevation, and this can be done in any view. All right, so once we're through with model display, we're going to go with shadows. Shadows can really, if needed, add quite a bit of depth and anything else like that to your model. The first one I kind of want to show you guys is just cast shadows. That's your basic one. So that casting a shadow is a sun pointing down at your object, and it's casting a shadow. So as you can see, we got a little bit of relief right there. All right, I think I should be live. I just got a notification that, okay, yeah, looks like we're still live. Okay, good. Again, this is our first time trying YouTube Live, and this is just a sidetrack, but everybody's kind of been doing this live Facebook, live YouTube, live Instagram thing, and we kind of saw it as a great opportunity to do our webinars and still have the video postable on YouTube. So give us a little bit of a break when it comes down to this. So, all right, continuing on. So with the shadows, again, gives a little bit of depth without removing a lot of the information from a drawing. Depending on what you're trying to convey, it can become a little bit distracting, but if you want to give a little bit of depth, so like right here, we can give a little bit of depth to our glass to say it's offset from the wall, you can do that with that. Ambient shadows. So ambient shadows are basically the reflection of the sun or the lighting element in your model. reflecting back and illuminating things from reflections or light bouncing off of a wall or shadows or anything like that. It's kind of it's the subtle light that kind of gets to a model. Again, you don't really see it too much, especially in this model, you don't really see it a lot. This is a pretty flat building. When we get into a 3D model though, you're really going to be able to see the difference between or a 3D view, sorry, the difference between ambient shadows. So those are those two. Sketchy lines, if anybody's worked in SketchUp, that's funny, sketchy lines, SketchUp. You can basically make this look like a hand drawing. I'm not exactly a fan of this. It's not exactly terribly useful as far as conveying like a construction drawing with a little bit more of an elevation feel. This is basically kind of what it looks like. You can make it so it looks like a little bit like a sketch, and you can kind of adjust these parameters to kind of make it a little bit more sketchy. In SketchUp, you can kind of do the same thing. If you go to styles, I gotta find this now, where is it? That, and we're gonna go to styles, and down here at the bottom, there's sketchy edges. That's so hilarious. I love that they use that. So basically you can make your, like if you see kind of how you made your model look like it's really hand drawn. This is good for specific instances, not necessarily all the time. Again, like I said, I don't usually do it in Revit. It's not really it doesn't really convey building drawings as well as anything else. So you can use it if you want. Go for it, kind of test it out. It's all up to you. We're gonna go back to this one, go like that. All right, so that's sketchy edges. You can give it a little bit more of a design flang. All right, depth queuing. So I'm currently using Revit 2017, and this is a new feature in Revit 2017, which is pretty awesome. So what this does is this allows you, and the reason I put the plants in is really kind of to highlight this feature because it's really awesome. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to hide these plants here in front really quick. Like I said, this is not an intense model, but there's a lot of things happening with the rendering. So to make it a little bit quicker, I'm going to go to hidden line, and then as you see, everything kind of like quickens up a bit because Revit isn't going, or Revit and my computer isn't going through the motions of trying to render all of those tree and plant elements. Oh, dang it. All right, so why can't it? There we go. I'm just going to hide these to get them out of the building way. All right, so I'm going to go back to realistic. Let it think for a second. Think everything's happening out on there. All right. Doing okay? Looks like the stream is still live. Okay. Go back to the graphic display options and go back under depth queuing. So this is going to give this ability to give you a little bit of depth effect by just blurring things that are far away and sharpening things that we want to be sharp. That's the nitty-gritty of it. All right. So basically what this does by checking this, see how like right there everything got a little bit gray? Let me show that to you again. So as this is thinking, those trees in the very back, they're going to get a little bit darker. Right now, everything's at the same color level. But with this, we can make that stuff that's really far back look a little bit darker, which I think is a pretty awesome thing. You can kind of play with the adjustments a little bit, and you can like pull this back to make sure that stuff maybe makes it a little more blurry and a little more faded, not necessarily blurry, but faded, which is kind of a really cool effect. See, as you see, as I kind of adjust these, it kind of adjusts itself to make it look like there's some depth to the 2D drawing. Whoa, that was way too much. Good old Lord. That's crazy. Don't want that too much. So there's a fine line between like kind of where you want to see your drawing and what you want faded, what do you want in the foreground, background, and middle ground. These are simple, basic rendering techniques basically for visualization. What do you want in your foreground? Foreground's the most important stuff. Middle ground, sort of important stuff. Background, it's in the background. You can forget about it. All right, so basically that's kind of what you're kind of getting with this depth queuing in 2017. Looks really great in a kind of a rendered elevation drawing. And what's nice is that it looks great in this drawing. This is also translatable, this depth queuing, in your normal views as well. Like even your shaded views get the effect that these trees right here, which are in the very far back, are further back than the ones that are bolder and darker and more in the foreground. So you can give your elevations, which stereotypically are very flat and 2D and static, you're giving your 2D elevations a little bit more of a, I don't know, some pizzazz, for lack of a better term. All right, so let's take this back to realistic. So I love that. That's new in 2017. Great feature. Love it. You should use it if you... Okay, my toolbar just randomly shoots over here. Okay. So that is depth queuing in 2017. Really great feature. Play with it. I encourage it. All right. So lighting. Lighting, you get two different options. If you have an interior elevation, you can turn on your interior lights. This is an exterior elevation, so we're going to be using the exterior sun as our light. And it's really great. You can kind of play with all of the settings of the sun. You can make it as bright as you want, as dark as you want it. You can kind of keep these as, you know, make your shadows really, really, I don't know, dark or light. You can play with the ambient light as well. So you can kind of turn up the ambient light, and that, like I said, that's the even light that kind of softens up an image. So like as you can see that, I up the ambient light, lower the shadows. That really kind of made this image pop a little bit. So if you just start playing with the settings, you're going to kind of come across a really specific view that you really like, that kind of fits for you. And so right now, if you hit the little in-session lighting button, you're going to get into the lighting that you can get. You can also change that, so you can get it from the top right. And then it changes it a little bit. So yeah, basically that's what the sun setting will do. I kind of like that actually. It looks really good with the ambient light, with the ambient shadows. Yeah, it's actually not bad. I kind of like that. Let's see what this does. Yeah, that's not bad. So I'm going to zoom in here really quick and show you guys kind of what I'm talking about, that shadow effect. Alright, so on our glass there, our shadows, they look to be a little bit of a lighter gray. And you can adjust that over here. So the lower it is, the lighter it is, and you can kind of adjust it to be a little bit darker. So see how that kind of makes that shadow a little bit more pop? So you can either make it softer, depending on your feel. So there, it's quite light. Here, I mean, strong shadows really kind of get really dramatic. And depending on your model and your design, they can sometimes be misinterpreted on a design document as an actual drawn line versus a shadow. So there is caution to the wind when you're kind of doing these, but I would, you know, play with it and make sure it's understood that there are shadows on for whoever is in the model, things like that. But yeah, it looks really good. I think this model is turning out pretty nice with these elevations. Again, it's thinking. You start putting a lot of vegetation in these models, it'll go crazy. All right. A couple other things we can do. This one I don't really play with a lot. It's a pretty good standard what it's set at. It's automatic for the exposure. You can play with it if you want. basically you can up or lower the value of the exposure. So the value of the exposure, if you know like photography terms, it kind of amplifies the light or de-amplifies the light depending on what you're doing. So like if you're shooting very low light scenes, you're going to want a higher exposure. A higher exposure. No, lower exposure, I think. Yeah, that's how it works. A lower exposure means that like it's open for longer, letting in more light, things like that. I tend never to use this. I like to just do automatic and just kind of let it do its thing. It looks really good. It's probably developed by Autodesk photographers, who knows. Okay, so last thing you can do in the graphics display option for especially views like this is you can add a background, which is really kind of nice in some instances. I'm actually going to zoom out a little bit so you get more of a picture for what we're kind of doing. And I'm going to turn off my crop. All right. There's a little bit of a delay with the live stream. It's kind of throwing me off. It's hilarious. All right, so there. Okay, now we got a little bit more of an image for what we're kind of dealing with. All right, so background. Currently, stock, there's nothing. You can add a sky, which is pretty awesome. As it's thinking. So this is Revit Sky. It's kind of a dark gray gradient with a gray blue. Not that great. I try not to get with the too many grays, and then it gets a little bit washed out. I don't really like it that much. This one's not that great. I do like gradient because a gradient, instead of the sky, is you can control the colors quite a bit better, which I really like. So man, we can make this thing really pop. Get like a bright blue in there. Make our horizon. Ooh, we can get really crazy with this. Give it maybe like a yellowish horizon. Oh, look good. And then ground color, we can make whatever we want. You probably won't see the ground color here in this elevation. That's fine. You would see it in a 3D view, but let that thing for a bit. Boom. Look at that. Oh man, that makes that thing pop so much. And again, this is simply just in a 2D drawing. This is not a rendering. You don't have to do all of the settings that I'm telling you to do. Yeah. So basically you can kind of make this look really, really cool. You can put an image in there, which I think I have one to use. It's pretty sweet, actually. I think I have a sunset just as an example. I do. All right, we're gonna try this. Because it's a little intense, depending on your picture, but it's whatever you want it to be. So I'll do this, that, this, and we're gonna go to sky. We want sunset trees. There we go. Boom. Now we have this insanely beautiful sunset as the background for this image. Like I said, it's bold, it's graphic. If that's something you want to do, play with it. Again, I'm just here to tell you that there are an insane amount of things that you can do with a simple elevation drawing. Again, all the stuff that I'm doing is really extreme. Like, I don't think you're going to have this sunset on a construction document, but hey, you never know. But so basically you can do all these really cool things with simple drawings just to make them pop. If your style is to give it the line drawing with a little bit of that depth cueing to make things a little bit grayer in the background, go for it. Hey, that's more power to you. If you like the graphic, bold, like sunset in the background with the trees, and you can kind of fine tune this thing to make it look how you want, go for it. There are a ton of tools at your disposal in Revit that you can use. And we haven't even touched into exporting this into an external renderer. So there's a lot of settings you can do. I encourage you to explore them. There's a lot to Revit that basically, whether you get taught Revit in school or whether you learn it in the field, there's a lot of things out there that no one teaches you because they just sit you down. They're like, all right, I need you to start working right away. Let's get these drawings cut out and boom, done. There's a lot to explore. So I encourage you to, like, if you're watching this video, definitely kind of explore the depth that Revit has to offer. And you know what? I'm gonna leave this how it is because I like bold. It looks awesome. All right. So that's number one. Different ways you can visualize your model in Revit. You can use those same exact settings. You can save them as a view template. You can throw them into a plan. You don't get the depth queuing in a plan, however. But you get the same kind of visualization controls that you get in those very 2D drawings. You can kind of liven up a plan. It's kind of up to you. There's a lot of settings in there. All right, now I'm gonna quickly go over, oh man, time is running out quick. Quickly go over creating and using materials. All right, so especially in this kind of a view, and what I'm gonna do really quick is I'm gonna turn off my planting because they are really slowing down the model. All right, so now we got this sweet sunset in the background. All right. So it looks like we have a little bit of material already done in here. So this right here, from what I can see, it's a wardrobe. It's a casework wardrobe. Right now it's set with a kind of a wood-ish material. It's really good. So basically what I'm going to kind of show you guys is a real quick tutorial on the strength of the material library and creator in Revit, and show you also how to create your own library of materials for your firm or for your personal use or anything like that. So if you go up here to the Manage Tool tab in the ribbon and you go over to Materials, this is going to open the, where'd it go? Oh, there it is, the Material Browser. All right, so basically this is kind of what controls your materials. A lot of stock Revit ones in there. Again, they're decently designed, like you get your brick. And the really nice thing about creating material is you get to build in not only the realistic rendering look of the material, but you also get to build into the 2D drawing material properties as well. So for an example, brick is a really common building material. And if you go and look at the render material, the rendering material that's stock out of Revit is a pretty good brick. It looks like a picture of brick. You can apply that and it'll look really well. And then up here in the rendering material preview, it renders really, really well. It has a relief pattern. A relief pattern is basically a bitmap that kind of tells the material and the mapper how deep each thing needs to be. So the darker it is, the deeper it is. So you can kind of get a little bit of an actual real texture to your material. So that's all under appearance for a material. And under graphics, like I said, you get to build in, if you don't want that realistic look all the time, you can build in the color and you can build in a relief, like a surface pattern, and you can apply that to a material. So basically, as an example, to kind of show you those two ideas, I'm gonna make this wardrobe not wood. Oh, that's a wall. Why is that a wall? That's not wardrobe. I'm gonna do it to this wall. So this wall is faced with the material of the casework, and for just an example's sake, I'm going to turn that to brick. All right, so to do that really quickly for you, I'm going to use the paint tool, which is this guy right here. You can just type PT. This is going to be able to paint with any material in my current library. So you grab the material, and I'm painting that to that brick. All right, done. So when I'm in this realistic view, your material looks like the actual material. Again, it looks like real wood, it looks like real brick. The trees look like real trees. Your grass is gonna look like any grass material you actually put in there. Like I said, sometimes that material isn't always warranted. And I'm also going to turn off my shadows really quick so you can actually see this. Okay, so it looks like brick, right? But sometimes that's not always needed. Sometimes you need to dimension out and actually coarse out your brick due to an actual dimension size needed or anything like that. So what you get is with that, when you build your materials, you have the ability to have the real material look, and then you have the appearance. So this is what it looks like in real life, which is what you see in a realistic view. And then you also get your shaded and consistent colors by doing this. So your brick pattern is a pretty standard brick pattern. It's a dimensionable line. It's really easy to use. And this color you can kind of fine tune to be a little bit closer to what your actual brick size is, or color is. So if that's actually your burgundy brick that you're using, maybe you don't want it this light. Maybe you want it a little bit darker, and maybe you want it a little bit, I don't know, redder. Like an actual burgundy. There we go, there's that. Maybe make it a little bit darker, make it a little purple hue. Okay, let's go with that, right? So this is what you will see when you change your view from realistic to consistent colors. Sorry, not shaded. All right, so that's what you get. You get a dimensionable, coarse pattern, right? You can't do that on the other one. So you can't snap to this because it's simply just an image. There's nothing to snap to. You can't do it. So, go back to consistent colors, shaded. This is what you get. And you still get the ability to have a little bit of color, which is nice. You get the line work. That's great. And then the nice thing about a shaded image setting is it still looks somewhat realistic. Not bad. It's believable. Alright, so that's basically what you get with the shaded, and if you set up your materials correctly, you can do that for any material. So you can have grass, like this is one that I actually built. So this is grass. It has a grass diffused image set at 20 by 20. So that's my grass pattern, and then I added a bump map to that, which is again, it's that black and white depth cue. And then you can kind of adjust how much bump you want based on that. And where that is shown, and I'm going to show you the difference between if you just set up your material really quickly and if you just set up. I'm going to have to go here pretty quick. Time is running out. Man, time flies. All right, so here's my grass material. This will be my last material, quick little session I'm going to show you guys. And then I'm going to get into the fun stuff. Okay, so this is the grass material, right? Looks really great. Actually has texture. If I change this view, so if you remember in my materials for grass, I only set up the appearance. I did not set up anything here. It's a disgusting gray, no pattern. So if I shade this and don't take away that, I haven't set up that color yet, so it's still that kind of that grayish look, which is, I don't know, it's whatever. You can make it work if you need to. But if you want, and you do have the shaded look and you still have the material, you can add a little bit maybe of a green color to it. So then that shows up a little green. I mean, get crazy and maybe make the grass EvolveLAB pink. I mean, I think that looks pretty cool, don't you guys? Green grass, yeah, I like it. But what's nice is that you can use that for visualization of like looking at different materials and things like that. So now, oh, all my grass is pink, but in real life, it's actually still grass. Wait, that's something. Oh, it's thinking. It's thinking. There we go. Okay. So yeah, in real life, it's still actually grass. It's not pink. It's, you know, you can use it how you need it. All right, and then really quick, I'm gonna touch on the rendering properties that you can kind of export your model into and kind of go over Nscape a little bit. So I've set up a view, and I'm going to go to my view properties. I'm going to find my view that I set up for this. Excuse me. All right. So we got somewhat of a rendered look here. Looks pretty good, actually. So this is kind of a scene that I've set up. It looks not super Revit-y, and by Revit-y I mean not white and black. So I mean I can make it that if I wanted. It's okay, I guess. I can turn my shadows off. It looks like a line drawing. Again, it's okay. It can work if you need it, but if you want to add a little extra, I don't know, look to the model, you can. And it's going to think a little bit again while it thinks. And again, like this is a 3D view, but you can set everything up like so maybe I don't want to show my edges. So the edges will disappear right over here. See, now it looks a little bit more realistic because you don't have that profile line that's kind of defining that. Don't have shadows on. Let's turn on shadows and ambient shadows. Let's make it look a little bit more realistic with some depth. Let Revit think for a little bit here. There, see that? See how it kind of makes everything a little bit more pop? And now we got this little shadow down here from the platform slab. The trees get a little bit of shadow. It looks a little bit better. Don't want to do sketchy lines, don't want to do that. You can't do the depth queuing in this one because it is a 3D view. Those are only available in the 2D elevation sections, things like that. So you can't do that in that one, unfortunately. But you can still adjust all of this stuff. Like I'm going to up that, up my sun a little bit. That's a lot of sun. Everything seems kind of washed out a little bit. There we go. That's a little bit better. Background, I'm going to go with the gradient here. We're going to go with that. That looks pretty good. Lining, apply. So this will give us, without even rendering anything, this will give us basically something that you could almost export out of SketchUp. Right? Camera standard. Perspective. So if I'm in SketchUp and I'm like using this as my renderer, look at that. I can almost set up the same exact scene in SketchUp. Shadows. I'm turning on fog just because it's fun. I can turn my edges off. Turn my profiles off. I mean, they look okay. I mean, if I turn off, I kind of want to adjust this a little bit. So we turn off that back sun to get it really looking like the SketchUp model. Basically what I'm trying to prove to you is that what you can do in any of those other 3D softwares just out of the box, you can do in Revit too. It's not hard. It's thinking for a little bit. All right, look at that. Yeah, I mean, those look basically almost similar as far as the models go. They look pretty good. So, like I said, there's a lot you can do. You can adjust the sun kind of where it is. Anything like that, you can get it really to lock into what it looks like in your other model. So just without doing any rendering at all, this is kind of what your model will look like, just stock out of Revit if you need quick visualization. Now I'm going to go over really quickly with you the 3 different ways that you can render in Revit that are pretty easy to use and you don't have to, do too much to them. So I'm going to show you the first one. First one is natively rendering in Revit with the renderer that is built into Revit. So if you go up here to View and you go over here to Render, the top one, you just click that. That's going to come up with this dialog box, and this is the in the software Revit renderer. So I'm going to just render a quick draft for you guys just to show you kind of quickly. You can just get a render really, really quickly. And you can set it to whatever image size you need, the level of image, if you need it to be like I'm doing a draft just for quick purposes. You can do a really high quality rendering for print and then take that into post-production. A lot of things you can do outside of that are really helpful. So this is simply just running the quick draft. Again, it's not really sharp, it's just so I can show you it quickly. But yeah, you get a pretty strong renderer right out of the box in Revit. And as you can see, it looks pretty good. Like I've set up a little bit of a driveway, we're getting in shadows, the realistic trees, they look pretty good. We're getting ambient shadows. We're getting the look of glass, transparency of glass, all of that. It's really good, looks pretty good. And honestly, for what, a minute worth of rendering, it's not bad. There's another way you can render, and that is if you really need to do a really large scale rendering, or if you want to do an animation, or you can even do a VR animation now in the rendering cloud for Autodesk. You can send this image to the cloud to be rendered. And right up here, well, you have to log in first. So you do have to sign into the Autodesk account, which I will do just so I can show you. All right, so I'm signed in and I can render in the cloud. And what happens is right when you click that, if you have credits, which depending on if you have credits or not, it'll let you know. Go away. Okay, so this is the setup box and direction box for rendering in the cloud for Revit. Step 1, you're gonna select your 3D view. Step 2, it'll tell you when it's ready. Step 3, you go online to the cloud gallery and you can download your image. Okay, good to go. Right now, if I want to render this one, it's going to contact Autodesk. It's going to tell me how many credits I have, which are, you do need to do high quality renderings. So you can do still images at a medium or lower megapixel. Those are free. Those images will be free. So you select your 3D view. You can do a bunch of them. Still image. Again, you can do the stereo panorama, all those fun ones. Render quality, standard or final. You need to pick your image size, maximum being the 16 megapixel. When I do that, as you can see, it says now I need 8 credits to create this. So as you kind of up your quality of rendering, you're gonna have to end up giving your images for that. And even if I go from standard to final, now I'm at 16, it just doubled. So you do have a little bit of leeway, but like I said, I think you can do, it's medium or lower at standard are free, which are really nice. And then what's really nice about this here too is alpha transparency background. So this is really helpful for if you want to put in your own sky. You can take out the background in Photoshop and replace it with your own sky. Really easy to do. So just for time's sake, I pre-rendered this. So basically, this is kind of what the Autodesk A360 render gallery looks like. So I already rendered this. Yes, I've new interface. So basically, this is the image that I rendered, right? Standard quality, megapixel, little bit different of a look than the one that you get in native Revit. But man, it still looks really good, right? Yeah, it's still a really good rendering, even for me working with the model for just a tiny little bit. It still looks pretty solid. All right. So now, the really fun stuff, the one that I'm really looking to tell you guys about is Nscape. So, Nscape is one of our favorite modelers here at EvolveLAB. It's a really great software program. It's a live renderer, look into Revit. You can adjust things on the fly. Nscape will react immediately. Really great software. I recommend it. We are using it a lot. So, basically, I'm going to do a couple side-by-sides to kind of show you guys how this works. My properties bar keeps going over here. Come over here. All right. Looks like everything's going well. All right, so this is what the Nscape live renderer looks like for Revit. It's really great software. It's a live look-in. And how I'm going to really kind of tell you how this really works is by showing you an actual plan view. It's actually a lot easier. Take that hidden line, and I am going to close that view. All right. So this is a live look into Revit. This is the model I built, literally just like today and yesterday. Like this is a live rendering look into your model. It has the sky, it has the sun, it has all of the materials that I built. It's all like a live look in. Looks really awesome. One thing really quick I'm going to show you as an example of how this is live, because I know I could be faking this. Whoa, I just flew a tree. That was awesome. That was so cool. Right? Oh man. And like this, what nice thing about Nscape is that it's actually using the Revit materials and items. So all of the materials that I built in Revit, it's using those. It's doing all of this stuff that's all reading the stuff out of Revit. So this is even more of a case for you to actually apply all of the things in Revit, because if you do that, you don't have to do it again in another 3D rendering software. And I know people like to do that. That's totally fine. You get a little bit more parameters and control by exporting a Revit model to 3ds Max, but this is a video showing you how you can have that ability to do it in the model. It's pretty awesome. All right, so I have my rendering on one side and I have the model on the other, right? Is it live? Is it? I don't know. Because if I move this fireplace into the middle of this room and my Revit plan, look at that. Oh, the Nscape modeler just live updated this fireplace. So you can render an image and you can kind of react to it on the fly. Look at this, I'm moving this around. Let's get crazy. All right, I'm gonna move this bathtub into the living room. And I'm gonna take this stove and put it in the living room. And I'm gonna draw a wall around it. Just because I want to. Look at that. All of that is live updating in Revit and Nscape. It's awesome. It's the greatest. Really great software. You can export full-size images out of this. I really, really like it. Just the fact that it's live, it gives you really good rendering images. It uses Revit materials. It uses Revit scenes, anything like that. It's great. Great software. I can't like it anymore. You do have quite a bit of control with it too. So if you go over here, back to the Nscape tab, you go to settings, you have a lot of control. You can control the depth of field a little bit if you want. You can go field of view. You can kind of adjust that as you see fit. Like this right here, the depth of field. Yeah, that looks cool. Like I can change the focal point and I'll update. That's cool. Yeah, really great software, a lot of settings. You can still export full-size images and export those into Photoshop, render them out. Really great software. Okay, so, no, go back. Post-production, last but not least. I'm not gonna touch a whole bunch on this because there's a huge amount of stuff you can do in Photoshop, in Illustrator, and these other kind of editing softwares as far as post-production. Kind of what you want to, I'm going to just give you an overview really quickly of kind of what you want to do. You want to make sure that if you are rendering it out of Revit, you do render out that transparent background. That can allow you to have your own background, your own sky, anything like that. Depending on the rendering software that you use, currently Nscape doesn't have this ability, but a lot of other software does. 3ds Max, V-Ray, another really great renderer. You have the ability to export lighting masks, material masks, anything like that. Gives you a lot of control with how you select things for your final post-production of your rendering. And then also it gives you the ability to add in extra trees or people or entourage or anything like that. I think it will end up being a whole nother series of videos on post-production. There are a ton of people out there who are really good at it. I would take a look online if you have questions for post-production work. Mainly what I wanted to focus on was kind of how you can get to that post-production point using simply only Revit, and how it's a great software to do that. Really great. I think that's about it. Chat's going really well. Looks like you guys are kind of chatting it up out there. I like it. Last but not least, I am about out of time here. I'm almost at an hour here. I'm gonna end here with a little bit of a promotion for what we're doing. So here at EvolveLAB, we're going to be kicking off the Render Lab. And this is going to be a new service that EvolveLAB is going to be offering. It's going to be full service rendering services. You send us a model. We can help you entourage it, set up your materials, set up your scenes, set up your lighting. We have the ability to do full scale rendering, export those for you. And we do have the skills and the expertise to also do the post-production work to kind of finalize that image, give it that little extra sparkle, add in some specific entourage if needed, anything like that. So we're going to be launching that very, very soon. I'm really excited about that, especially with all of the tools that are available in Revit. So you being able to set up your own materials on your model and then send it our way, like that eliminates a ton of time having to sit there and model them on their own. For those of you who are watching and live chatting, Kali, looks like it's the first time you've heard about Nscape. Nice job. I hope you get to try the trial. I think you get a 2-week trial. It's pretty awesome. Love it. Try it out. See if you like it. Live Renderer, best one out there. Love it. And again, yeah, so we're going to be kicking off Render Lab pretty soon here in the upcoming year. So maybe even before that. Really excited about that. Maybe in the next month. So yeah, let us know in the comments section of the video or anything like that. If you guys have rendering needs, reach out to us. We can set up a quote for you guys and we can go from there. All right, so that's, man, we kind of flew through that. Hour is never enough time to get through all the stuff that really is available and the things I want to talk about. But yeah, so feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. You can email me with questions. You can drop them in the comments of the video. This video will be uploaded to our YouTube page directly after this, so feel free to rewatch it. Put any comments in the comments section of the video. We'd love to hear your guys' feedback. If you have ideas or questions or things that you've never thought of or anything like that, feel free to comment or shoot me an email and we can go from there. Also, yeah, just kind of let us know how it goes. And would like to thank everybody who kind of tuned in and chatted along with us. Hopefully we'll be talking with you guys soon, and hopefully you look forward to our next kind of YouTube live session. I really enjoyed it. It's kind of nice to kind of have it more conversational versus kind of a very formal webinar. So hopefully you guys liked it, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks, guys.